Dr. Astrid Tuminez was appointed the 7th president of Utah Valley University in 2018 and is the institution's first female president. She brings to UVU a broad and rich experience in academia, philanthropy, technology, and business. Born in a farming village in the Philippines, moved with her parents to the slums of the Philippines when she was 2 years old. Her parents were seeking better educational opportunities for her children. Her pursuit of education eventually took her to the United States, to Brigham Young University, where she graduated summa cum laude in 1986 with a bachelor's degree in international relations and Russian literature. She earned a master's degree from Harvard University in Soviet Studies in 1988 and a PhD from MIT in political science in 1996. Before assuming her current position, President Tuminez was a world leader in the fields of technology and political science, most recently serving as an executive in Microsoft, where she led corporate, external, and legal affairs in Southeast Asia. She's also the former Vice Dean of Research and Assistant to Dean of Executive Education at the National University of Singapore, the premier school of public policy in Asia. She and her husband, Jeffrey Tolk, have 3 children. In her spare time, which I understand there's not too much of right now, she enjoys running, dancing, and martial arts. Before I invite her to the stage, we've had a luck in her schedule and in 10 of your schedules. Her appointment immediately following this has been loosened, and so she will enjoy lunch with 10 students who are the first ones to see Haley Gaffa in the back after this meeting. We have no idea what the meal is because we're going to be buying it from one of the vendors, one of the wonderful vendors here on campus. But the first 10 of you who see Haley will be given the opportunity to have lunch with her as part of our class. So will you now please join me in welcoming President Tuminez to the stage. Thank you so much. Your water, your clicker. And your clicker you need to point at the advance.
Okay, can you hear me? So welcome to this lecture. I hope, how much money did you pay? If you like it, you can give me $2 on the way out. We'll use it to pay for our lunch. So thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing UVU. Thank you for what you do to help yourselves succeed in your program of study here at Utah Valley University. Today is exactly my 4-month anniversary. Exactly 4 months at UVU. And this relationship is working out very well, I would say. And I hope that it lasts for many years. So what I wanted to do today, when I was asked to give this lecture, I thought, since you're business school students, I had to have the word business in there. But I call it the business of life because it's going to be maybe a little more broad than just business as we know it. My own background, as you know, is quite diverse, and when I was living my life and building my career, I didn't really see where that was going, but I had some rules that I wanted to do interesting things, and I wanted to do things that helped make the world better, and I wanted to do things that paid me well enough, and brought me in touch with interesting people, and took me to interesting places, so those were some of the criteria that I had. When I started here at Utah Valley University on my first day, I sent an email out to the community, and I quoted one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver. And when I was here in Provo interviewing, I saw on the window of Pioneer Bookstore. How many of you go to Pioneer Bookstore, the used bookstore? It's a great place. I saw this quote in the window, and this is from one of her poems that I really love. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And so underline wild and precious life. For people, we're kind of wild. You're a lot younger than I. You're probably wilder than I am. But precious. Time is so precious. And we are, if we're lucky enough, we will have, so many decades. What do we plan to do with that time? And the first thing that I want to talk about is change, because, we have time, and what we know with time, and as you live your life, you study, you get married, have a family, work, is that the one constant in life is change. And for me, I think in my 20s, I didn't really understand or appreciate the nature of change very well. And I don't think, in fact, that I handled change very well. I was not enjoying change as it was happening. I was kind of looking always to where I needed to go, and as the processes unfolded, I did not spend enough time relishing it or really experiencing it. So change is a constant, and I want to spend the next few minutes talking about the nature of change today, particularly as it impacts higher education and the world of work. And you know, I used to work for Microsoft. I'm going to use a few slides that I've used a lot in Microsoft. So today there is a lot of talk about the fourth industrial revolution, and that's become even a little bit of a cliche. But if you were to look back, before we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, let's talk about the first one that happened in the 1700s and really harnessed what? What did that first revolution harness? Water and steam, right? Water and steam to mechanize production, and it led to inventions like the steamboat, and it culminated in the invention of a machine that could run faster than a horse. So now, if you, are there any fans of Pride and Prejudice here? When I'm sick, I always watch Pride and Prejudice, and my husband knows I'm really sick. Because it entertains me, makes me laugh. Anyway, so it culminated in the invention of a machine that could run faster than a horse. So imagine if Mr. Darcy, you know, no longer had to ride his horse, or Elizabeth Bennet didn't have to ride a horse to Bingley's estate, then certain things would or wouldn't have happened. And so this invention of the locomotive changed everything. It changed the way people worked and communicated and traveled, what they could do, who they could see. And then fast forward in the 1800s, you have the second industrial revolution, anchored in electricity and mass production. And the impact of this, societal impact, may be best illustrated by a couple of pictures. This one is Broadway, New York City. You recognize the building here? What is this building? Flatiron. The Flatiron. I lived in New York City for 13 years. So this is 1905, and you see in this picture, what? It's a few cars, maybe very little, but mainly buggies, horses. And at this point in time, in 1905, 25% of the United States agricultural output was used to feed horses. There was a big industry around feeding horses. And you go 20 years later, you don't see horses anymore. So this industrial revolution not only had machines that could move faster than the horse, but replaced the horse entirely for certain purposes. And in fact, in this period, businesses that were around, the horse, feeding horses, et cetera, a lot of them went bankrupt. But then new industries became born, like the consumer industry, because to buy a car was expensive, you needed credit. And so this is, again, just to illustrate the magnitude of this type of change. And the third industrial revolution, many of you weren't born when they started, but I was. Around the microprocessor, and led to things like this, right? When I was studying at Brigham Young University, I started on an electric typewriter. How many of you have worked with an electric typewriter? Thank you. We gotta talk later. I was so excited writing papers on an electric typewriter because in the Philippines, I only had mechanical typewriters. I didn't even own one. I had to beg friends to let me use their typewriter. And then when this came out, it was so exciting. The only thing you could do really at the time was kind of write papers on the computer. But I remember when I first got a laptop, I was working for Harvard University. I flew to Moscow and lived there, but I would come back every 6 weeks to see my husband in New York City. And I was so proud to be the owner of this amazing new technology called the laptop. And I would put it on my back. And you know how much it weighed? 16 pounds, I think, with the battery. That was about just under a fourth of my body weight. And I would walk at the Frankfurt airport with that thing. I was so proud, like I'm the cutting edge of technology. All right, so now today, okay, hold up your phones. And you have your laptops, your phones. You got more computing power now in that one phone than, companies or entire cities had 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So today, the nature of change, we have the fourth industrial revolution. And I do like that term. I think it is correct. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum came up with that. I think it's probably accurate to say that we are really, in the beginnings of this fourth industrial revolution, powered by this new technology called cloud computing. Cloud computing, and you think about cloud computing, not the cloud literally, but this massive football field size buildings that are housing gazillions of servers. And these don't take very many people to run. When people get excited about, is it Facebook that has a data center in Utah or Amazon? That doesn't generate employment very much. I mean, I don't know, it takes 8 people, but this is amazing because what allows us to move the way we move and work the way we work and learn the way we learn and consume the way we consume, on our mobile devices is really the cloud, and that is an amazing thing. This fourth industrial revolution has led to changes that are physical, biological, and digital. So in the physical world, I think I am probably one of the people most excited about the driverless car because I hate to drive. And I've never really driven in my life the way I do now, where I have to drive every day. And so I would probably be the first buyer of a driverless car. Physical things, I took this picture. What do you think that is? Any ideas? What? It's a blouse. I was at the Metropolitan Museum of New York, that was in my old neighborhood, and there was this giant, Custom Institute exhibit, and they had Christian Dior and Versace and Chanel, and then I get into this room and they have 3D printed clothes. So these are the physical things that are changing. And in the biological sphere, we have genomics-based medicine. I used to be a biotech investor, venture capital on Wall Street. Genomics-based medicine that is really advancing, very different now than when I was doing that type of investing. And then you have new ways of doing agriculture. I used to love this video at Microsoft where cows would be given sensors. And you put sensors on these cows, and then it's kind of, finding the right time and then to mate, and therefore you got more calves. And that's what's happening. This is really an amazing thing in the biological world. And then, of course, digitally, the new business models of Lyft, Uber, Airbnb, the sharing economy, none of that would have been possible without the fourth industrial revolution. Let me play this for you just to illustrate. Can we dim the lights a little bit?
People used to refer to the 2 pillars of discovery, theory, and experimentation, but now you got to look at computing also as a way of discovery.
In the life and medical sciences, the days of the aha moment when the test tube turns blue and you've made all your discoveries is ending. The new life science discovery paradigm is massive amounts of data, new ideas for analyzing that data, and the capability of doing it.
If you go back to 2001, it cost $100 million to sequence a genome because all that technology has been commoditized. Today, it's less than $6,000. The sequencers that are out there are generating data so fast right now that 15 petabytes of next generation sequencing information needs to be analyzed on an annual basis. The data is doubling every 8 months, and our compute capability is only doubling every 24 months. So it's going to be hard for institutions to create computing resources to be able to do this alone. This is where the cloud comes in. It makes sense to have cloud providers like Microsoft Azure to provide those resources. What's exciting is that We have access to Hadoop-based tools. HD Insight provides us an interface that enables life scientists to grok this humongous amount of data that's coming out of next-generation sequencers in a very natural way.
When we first started doing this a year ago, it took 2 weeks to analyze one genome on our computer. We now do 100 genomes a day.
So what excites me about what I'm doing in the cloud is the ability to accelerate discovery to the point that we may be able to find treatments for cancer. It's the journey of discovery that drives me more than anything else. And in the process of doing that, also being able to educate our leaders and scientists and engineers of tomorrow.
All right, I don't mean this to be a Microsoft commercial, but I was so excited when I watched this video, and this is already a couple years old. So think for a moment about 2001 when this professor said it cost $100 million to sequence a genome. And around 2 years ago, it cost $6,000. And then when they were doing this using the power of the cloud, it took them 2 weeks at the beginning to do a genome, and then now they were doing 100 in a day. So the scale and magnitude and speed of change is really remarkable, and this is happening in our lifetimes, which I think is remarkable. And then now you think about these changes that technology has brought about in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the implications for us are, and for your generation, when you read these articles by experts saying that 65 to 85% of the jobs that millennials and Generation Z will have, they don't even exist yet. So even a job such as a cloud server administrator, if you think about 15 years ago, that's not a job that would have been so much in demand or even existed. But that's the kind of job where, the city of New York could take people with no college degree and just give them 16 weeks. In 16 weeks, they could get that certification and be employed in a field that is growing. So what about you as you think about what we are doing here at UVU? What is it that we do in our education and training that helps you prepare for the jobs that don't even exist yet? And then, of course, it's not all bright and rosy, right? We know that there are horrible things happening as well, particularly as the world is connected, as the borders of business and communication have all come tumbling down. You have a parallel movement of crime, a parallel movement that is damaging people's lives and businesses. This is many, many hundreds of billions of dollars a year in cost. Not everybody who is hacked reveals that they are hacked. Nobody is exempt. Governments have been hacked, businesses have been hacked. Sony was hacked, as you know. You've heard of the WannaCry virus, the NotPetya virus that nearly crippled Ukraine. You now hear of states developing and funding massive cyber offensive warfare capabilities. And then at the same time, our policies, our laws, have not entirely kept up with the way that technology has moved and the way that, crime is being perpetrated and really all sorts of innocent people. If you look at fraud today, the targets, for example, are elderly people. Criminals make a ton of money targeting elderly people. So this is food for thought for all of us. And now let's pause for a second, because I have asked myself as president of a university, or before when I worked for Microsoft and had a lot of conversations with governments, how do we stay real and pragmatic and successful as all of this change is happening? And some of these things that I've put on here are not topics that I have answers for, but I think we need to talk about this in a university setting. These are things to discuss with your colleagues, with your classmates, with your professors. Faculty need to discuss this. Politicians need to discuss this. There's a lot of talk about technology, and walls have come tumbling down, so there is more opportunity in theory. We should have now the chance to create more opportunity for more people. As artificial intelligence advances, how do we make sure that humans are not abused? How do we make sure that there's ethics and empathy embedded in the DNA of artificial intelligence so that they do more good rather than harm. All of this talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Yes, I am a proponent of that, and we should all be, but at the same time, that's not the answer to everything. When I talk to employers, they say that one company here told me that the only UVU students he didn't hire were those who had poor interviewing skills. So that is something else. It's not, it's not your technical knowledge, but your ability to communicate, these other skills, soft skills, collaborating, problem solving, resilience, learning from failure, getting up when you fail, learning fast, failing fast, learning fast. The role of the humanities and the social sciences continue, in my opinion, to be very, very relevant. In fact, when people tell me that, the humanities could be a degree to nowhere, I say, well, I am a humanities person, and it seems like I've gone everywhere. And if you look outside the philosophy department in our Clark classroom building, you'll see that they have a big poster outside on the salaries of philosophy majors. So do not poo-poo the humanities. Character, your integrity, work ethic, our kindness, our leadership and service. These are things that do not go out of fashion. So today, as we think about the business of life, of creating our careers, of leading our communities, our families, our cities, and our nations, we need to be able to understand these changes that are happening and develop the judgment to say what is merely fashionable versus what is here to stay, and what we take to heart so that it informs what we do in the choices that we make and how we use our resources. So with my last few minutes, I want to leave some time for question and answer. I want to share 10 rules for life, because these are the things I wish someone had told me or I wish I had known. How many of you are in your 20s? The majority of you are in your 20s. How many of you, I am simultaneously pitying you and jealous of you. Because 20s is an exciting age, but also a lot of nonsense also happens in our 20s. 30s. All right, then I won't ask the rest. Let's just say that we're all in our 30s. So what do I wish I had known and understood better when I was younger? And this thing, I think that dreaming, the importance of dreaming. Dreams are really important, no matter who we are and what we are and who our parents are and were, and what city we came from and what we look like. There is one thing that we could all do, and that is to dream. And in my life, that's been very important because I grew up here, that's me. My aunt who lived with me as a child, she just passed away yesterday morning. So back to that point about what will we do with our one wild and precious life. And in this hut, I dreamt for free, which was really wonderful. And I had many, many visions in my head about where I could go and what I would do. And in the last few years that I lived in Asia, I actually worked with many domestic helpers. There are hundreds of thousands of women from the Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar, who migrate to Hong Kong and Singapore to become maids. And because many of them are Filipina, I got to know them, and I started systematically through a nonprofit to work with them, because they live in many of them are abused, modern slavery conditions, unpaid, locked in the apartment, sometimes physically abused. Some of them have died, some of them have fallen out while trying to clean the windows of their employers. And when they came to me, they were all very afraid, very afraid. They didn't think that they had any rights or any worth, that they should be treated as full human beings. And so we trained them in financial management, entrepreneurship. 90% of the women I worked with in Singapore opened bank accounts for the first time. And I taught them that dreams were free. I came up with that phrase when I was with them, because they felt so powerless. And so for us here in this room, I think our conditions are much better. So let us not lose this opportunity to dream for ourselves and to dream for others. Second, get the best education that you can possibly get. And that best education, I was talking to a gentleman the other night, someone I love and respect, very successful. And he said to me that many years ago, when he did not get into Harvard University for his undergraduate degree, he felt like a failure. So he went to BYU and worked, and then he applied for the Harvard Business School, and again did not get in, and again he felt like a failure. And this gentleman, at the end of the day, happened to be one of the most successful people in technology that I know. And so what is the best education? It doesn't have to be Harvard. I frankly believe and feel that you are getting the best education here at Utah Valley University. And when you do well here, you can apply to any graduate school. And I think your chances would be great because you have excelled here. So the best education today also means that we are open to things we've not considered before. It also means that we should break down our biases about the things that we are what we should learn, or only stay very narrow. Don't stay narrow. In my undergraduate life, I nearly had a minor in French, all for fun. It didn't apply towards my graduation in Russian literature or in international relations. But when I was doing archival research in the Russian archives, when they let me read the letters of the czars and the letters of people from 1856 during the Crimean War, guess what? It was all in French. I didn't even know that I would be reading all these documents in French. It was all in French because of the nobility and intellectuals of Russia in the 19th century spoke fluent French and wrote in French. They did not use Russian because that was the language of the peasants. So get the best education, learn from people who are sitting next to you, cultivate a curiosity for life, curiosity. And then that becomes something that will feed lifelong learning. I see people yawning, so I'm going to speed up. Third, who's not married yet? Okay, this is important for you. If you're already married, please don't be a jerk. And also tell your spouse, don't be a jerk either. So don't be a jerk. Don't marry a jerk. And I say that as you know, the business of life that is so critical. When I talk to I have 3 children, I always ask them and brainwash them, what's the most important decision you'll ever make in your life? You know, what did mom say? And they know the answer is, you know, the person I'm going to marry. And this is the young Albert Einstein. He was married to Mileva, who was brilliant in math and physics. And they had a very difficult relationship. And at the point of breakdown, Einstein gave her this memo. Seriously. All right, now you get what I mean, okay? Do not do this. And, you know, incredible. So I think the marriage relationship, I have seen so many successful people melt down in their personal lives. Tragedy. And so what I would say to you is, as you build successful lives, as you have ambitions to build successful lives, define your success fundamentally first with your most important human relationships. So that's another rule that I would share. I have 10. Try green eggs and ham. Try green eggs and ham. I've known people of different ages who are so set in their ways. It's not just old people who are set in their ways. Young people can also be set in their ways. And what happens sometimes is like the kid, the Sam I Am, right? Sam I Am in Dr. Seuss's book, who said no and no and no. I will not have it on the train. I will not have it in the rain. I will not have it here or there. I will not have it anywhere. And then what happened to him? He tried it and he liked it. He liked green eggs and ham. So when I was married for about 3 years, I was offered a job by Harvard University, a very big job, and I would have to live in Moscow, but my husband was in New York starting his legal career, and this was a green eggs and ham situation for me. And people in my church thought my marriage, I was going to get a divorce, I was being judged in so many negative ways, and it was hard to be put in that position. But in that green eggs and ham moment, I'm so glad that I tried it, because that job, which was the biggest, baddest job I could get at the time, set me up for the next decades of my life. And I was able to work with Gorbachev, with his foreign minister, Eduard Shevardnadze. I became an advisor to the first Chief Justice of the First Constitutional Court of what was then still the Soviet Union. So try green eggs and ham, learn languages. And in the old days, this would have been literally learn languages. But we know with artificial intelligence today, I had my Microsoft colleagues, demonstrate this technology. You talk with your own voice. It comes out in Chinese, in your own voice on the other end. That is going to get better and better. We now have the Google Translate. You have Bing Translate. This is going to get better and better, but languages are also metaphorical. I was born in a village and raised in a hut in the slums in the Philippines, and I knew nothing. If I hadn't learned languages, I could not have gone out there. And if I hadn't been open to say, I want to be global, I want to know what Malaysians think, I want to know how Indonesians do whatever they do, I want to learn how Hinduism evolved in Bali, that kind of thing, those are languages. And it helps us become better people and live fuller lives. Have a personal board of directors. So those of you who are business students know the importance of a board of directors for a company, right? Because the board sets what? It's governance, the direction. They hold the CEO and the managers accountable. Have a personal board of directors, and these are mine. My husband is this guy who deserves to be sainted and given a Nobel Prize in patience. But it's partly his fault I turned out the way I turned out. Because, I've told the story when we were engaged, and he turned to me and he said, you are responsible for your own happiness. And I agreed, and so there you go. So a personal board of directors are people who love you and will hold you accountable and will tell you when you're being crappy. They will tell you in no uncertain terms. You need those people in your lives. And if you have them, cultivate the relationship. This gentleman, recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom and my former boss, he just turned 93. I just celebrated his birthday with him in his home in Washington, D.C. I will do anything for him today. If he picks up the phone and he needs me, I will do it because he has done the same thing for me. So cultivate your personal board of directors, deliver for them, they will deliver for you, they'll tell you the honest truth, and you can keep benefiting from their wisdom through the years. Professor Gary Browning from BYU gave me my first big job, and to this day, he is a mentor to me. Target your efforts. There's too many things that keep us busy. There's only 24 hours in a day. I was working on the peace process in the southern Philippines. These were young Muslim leaders. And the facilitator for this peace process was the government of Malaysia. I represented the United States. Malaysia didn't want us in the room. I could have forced my way every time. And the Malaysians would always say, yes, thank you. And then they will completely ignore us. And I thought my efforts there were going to be wasted. So I ran a program called the Young Moro Leaders Program for the young Muslim leaders to have certain discussions going with them to try to fight this war for their dignity a little differently than their fathers and mothers did over 300 years. So target your efforts, and that made a difference. So target your efforts where you can make a difference and build a reputation for excellence. I probably don't have to say very much about that. I only have 2 minutes left. Deliver. When someone gives you an opportunity, take it seriously. Take it as a sacred trust, and then bigger and bigger things will come your way. And soon you do not have to ask anyone for a job. People will want you. Your reputation will be out there, and it will serve you well. Keep a beginner's mind. I'm a student of Buddhism for about 11 or 12 years now. And in Zen Buddhism, in Japanese martial arts, they talk about a beginner's mind. And the quote here is very important. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. If the jobs you're going to have don't even exist yet, you have to have the agility and flexibility to pivot to many different and new things. And you have to have a beginner's mind. You are open. You are humble. You can learn. You can fail and pick yourself up and learn. So that's what a beginner's mind is for. You need to cultivate that. And then finally, replenish your strength. This is my family. I used to wakeboard. I haven't done it here in Utah. What are the things that give you joy? What are the things, where is your quiet space? Where is the place where you can hear yourself think or even stop yourself from thinking? clean up the mind and let your consciousness be happy in a space that is not so noisy. I will end with, This is really important. This number 10 is so important because this will happen to you and to me. And this will happen. This is a sculpture that I found in the National Gallery in Singapore. This is called Grief. And if you look at this sculpture, the figure is folded into a very painful fetal position. And I froze on the spot when I saw this because I realized I have felt that. I have seen that and felt that. And I've gone through that for weeks, months. And and still I rise. Still I come up out of this. So for sure, my dear students and faculty and administrators who are here, you will have this moment and you will have these moments. So we need to know what will replenish our strengths. And for me, the best way to replenish my strength is often this one, the parable of the Good Samaritan. The busy guy who was busy on his way to a busy meeting to make some great money and great success, but he stopped because he asked himself the question, if I help, because he didn't ask the first question, he asked the second question. For people with very limited approach to the business of life, they will ask, if I help this man, what will happen to me? It's all about me. The truly successful, I think, happy person who will not have regrets on her deathbed will ask this question more. If I don't help this man, what will happen to him? So I will end here. We have 13 minutes, maybe 15 for Q&A. Thank you very much. I'd be very happy to answer questions. Thank you. Okay, I'll repeat your questions when you ask them so everybody can hear. Come on, Wolverines, you can ask questions. Yes.
So you talked about how you've fallen and how you felt grief. When did you feel, I guess, down the most in business, and how did you come up out of that?
In work. So when I was younger, I was really hard on myself. I had to be perfect. I think I mentioned there was a night at Brigham Young University, 11 p.m. I leave the office where I was working, and I walk across campus crying. Why? I had an A- in political methodology. I mean, how dumb was that? Just imagine a 20-year-old, or I don't know, 19, 20, walking across this sad winter landscape, tears streaming down my face. So, of course, then my father, so business, not so much. I learned over time, that I lost a job once because the Russian market collapsed. I had never, ever, ever thought that with my work ethic and my education, that someone would ever say to me, oh, you're not needed, go out, leave now, take your folders and leave. It happened to me. So in business, but what I learned in business is I could almost brush it off because there's always the next best thing, the next fun thing. What is harder is in our personal lives. I was unprepared for my father passing away when I was only 27. And so these other things that kind of blindside you, even though, yes, he was old, but I just never thought parents died. I just thought, I don't know why, I thought parents were immortal. And so I was unprepared for that. And so the things that you're unprepared for, if you've read my, my little silly person of the year interview in Utah Valley magazine, that is true. I talked about my remembrances in there, that every day I remind myself, I'm of the nature to get old, I'll get old. I'm of the nature to get sick, I'll get sick. I'm of the nature to die, I'm going to die. Everything and everyone I love is of the nature to change, I'm going to lose them. And then 5, the only thing I'm going to take with me will be my habits of speech and action and thought. And that's pretty harsh, some people would say, but I don't think so. I think it's really good because it's okay, by the way, to feel grief. I also want to say that. I'm not saying that you brush it off. It's okay. I even wallow for sure. And then at the end of the day, just to embrace that and say my grief, I know you're there. And I embrace that, and then you know, then you keep going. You keep going because what replenishes your strength? Because you're serving others. Because, you know, you love your mom, because you have a child, because you know that if you're going to be kind to your classmate today, you never know what that will do years down the road. It may be that one moment. So keep replenishing. Know yourself and replenish the things that do make you, you know, be your best self and your most resilient self. Jobs, don't worry. There are many jobs in the world. Many. And you'll have another opportunity always. Yes. Oh, sorry. There was one here and then there. Go ahead.
You said remain flexible at all times. When you just graduated from BYU, did you ever have it in your mind that you will one day be a president of a university?
Oh, did I ever think when I graduated from BYU that I would be president of a university? Absolutely not.
So, what tips, if you will, do you have for someone to always remain flexible when a career 180 change would come or might come?
So what advice would I give to someone who?
How to remain flexible?
Oh, yes. So my career, because I'm a different generation from you, my career was very unusual. I had an 11-year career in political science and Soviet studies. I wrote a book on Russia. Then I had, you know, my 4-year career in banking and venture capital. Then I had my 4-year career in peace negotiations. And I was an academic for 4 years. And I was a technology person for 6 years. It's unusual, but I think it will be very normal for all of you. And so what's kept me there is that in the old days when I felt I had to apologize for my, you know, CV, what's kept me there and kind of keep going in ways that were meaningful and were advancing was that I could always link what I wanted next to what I was doing before. So when I applied to be an investment banker at Morgan Stanley, I was able to link it to what I had been doing in philanthropy. So know your story and connect your own dots. But I was also very honest about what I didn't know. So when I interviewed with Vikram Pandit at Morgan Stanley, he later became the CEO of Citibank, I said to him, you know, Mr. Pandit, you can ask me anything, but not about investment banking. And he was kind of taken aback by my request, but he was okay with it. And we had a 2-hour conversation. And I had a job offer from Morgan Stanley about 3 weeks from that. So know what you don't know. And then once you have a track record that is solid, you could talk about what you've done. And I've never stayed anywhere like a year, 2 years. That also would not be good. People would kind of look at you and say, well, maybe you don't have a commitment. So you have to stay long enough to be able to say you have these impact and these contributions to where you were. And then today, knowledge, I think whether you're a technical person or a, you know, poetry person, or, you know, I think today the connections are even thicker and stronger. So the more that you could try to connect, you know, where you are to where you need to go. Things that never change, if you can speak well, if you can synthesize ideas well, there is a desperate need. In every field I've been in, there's a desperate need for people who could communicate and get along well with others. And so those are the skills that whatever you focus on, do not forget those skills and get tutoring and mentoring in those skills if you don't have them. Yes, please.
So we see successful people like you and people who are going to talk to us in the weeks coming up. What is your advice to someone who wants to have a fulfilled and happy life on our journey to success now?
What's my advice to people who want a happy and fulfilled life on their way to success? We should all have a happy and fulfilled life right now. It's 12:14 p.m. Make the decision right now, 12:14 p.m. in the Reagan Theater, that right now you have a happy and fulfilled life. A happy and fulfilled life I learned by my 40s. It took me a long time to learn it. Was not in the arrival. It wasn't in the arrival. Right now, standing in front of you in the Reagan Theater, I am breathing with no pain. That is a happy life. That's happy. Right now, you're business students in an exciting school, the biggest business school in Utah. 1 of every 4 business graduates in the state of Utah come from the Woodbury School of Business. You have professors who care about you. We have an incredible pass rate in the Chartered Financial Analyst exam, level 1. We are quite fulfilled. We are quite fulfilled. So if you do not know how to do that, learn how to do that. I read a book that I really loved called The Untethered Soul. I think that's the title, The Untethered Soul. And what I love about that book was there was a part of that, a paragraph that said, the decision to be happy could be made in a split second. That's because the brain and emotions and the way the brain works could be told to do that. And so it takes training. If you look at neuroscience today, unless our brains have real physiological problems, it's a whole entirely different context. But I would like to challenge you that I would like to challenge you to know and to think that right now, right here, you are happy and fulfilled. Just take 10 seconds to think about that. And then really that continues. You're not going to be happy and fulfilled when you get married. You're not going to be happy and fulfilled when you make your first million. That's not the point. The point is this: I'm happy and fulfilled now. So I wish someone had told me that in my 20s. Yes, please, in the back.
So I have a quick question. So you talked about the link from one career to the next. And my question is that whichever one of those careers, when you're in the first couple of years of that, did you ever reach a point where you were wondering what was going to be next and got kind of afraid that you didn't have a plan? And is that something? I mean, so I'll say, so I'm not a student here.
Yes.
I work here. I'm
Yes.
4 or 5 years into my career. And I feel like I'm at that point, like, should I be planning more? Like, what should I do?
Yeah. So the planning, I think, so let me think about that for a second. So are you going to plan your next phase? What happened to me from one career to the next? I get bored. So one of the things that happens to me is I get bored. And so when I get bored, it's like I've got to go somewhere else. Or I've also felt at one point my employers didn't fulfill their promises to me. And then I will just say, I've got to find something else. So, so it's sort of your own dynamic, right? Your own dynamic. And I knew that I always needed something where I was growing and being challenged. And I kind of had ideas in my head, but I surprised myself. I never thought I had it in me to ever be in any field that was financial or business in nature. When I graduated from Harvard, I looked down on the business school graduates because I thought they had no souls. Because they waved a dollar bill when they stood up. And I was the person who was going to change the world. How biased was I and how blind? And then when I worked in venture capital and worked with MDs, PhDs, MBAs, all in one person, they'd have those degrees, I realized that, I was uneducated, and I realized that even my field, Soviet studies, I didn't understand it anymore because it was moving into this capitalistic, phase. So you have to kind of be observant about your own life. If something is no longer feeding your soul, why are you in it? And of course, we all need to make a living. Sometimes that is very important. And then you have to make those decisions, but without necessarily rigidly planning. That's why I mentioned soft skills and the critical nature of soft skills, because if you can speak and you can write well and you can synthesize complex ideas into simpler phraseology, everybody will hire you. Everybody will hire you. And then, I did have those loose rules about, one, will this next thing be fun? Will I like the people I'm going to be with? Does it pay me enough money that I feel I'm getting my worth? And does it help me to learn new things? The one final thing I would say is, when I've made these transitions so hard, when I've entered fields I didn't know. So when I went to Wall Street, my ultimate boss, Hank Greenberg of AIG, just let me take classes and let me listen everywhere. So that was great. But I have to say that it was so difficult for me to analyze financial statements, learn about project finance, because those were not the things I was naturally interested in. My natural interest was reading novels, watching movies, So that was harder, and then I went to Microsoft. My 6 months, I was drowning. I didn't understand the words they were using. And to be in your 40s and start a job where you don't understand the words you're using, and I had to establish my credibility very quickly because I was also supervising lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer. And all of those lawyers looked at me and said, why are you our boss? You're not even qualified. So you're gonna really have to put in your all when people take a risk in you and give you a chance in a field that is not your field. But think about what moves from field to field. Think about those skills. If you don't have them now, cultivate them. You have time. Ask yourself, what do I have now? What do I not have that I can cultivate? I think we are out of time. So thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for letting me be here.